footsteps echo against the cold limestone walls of Jerusalem long after the city has gone to sleep. They read it as a spiritual starting line, a command to clean up your act. Pray a specific prayer. Turn over a new leaf. Between yourself and the dirt of your past failures. You know the sweat on your palms and the quiet terror of slipping down a rung. You think if you can just fix your temper, clean up your habits, and silence the dark thoughts in your head, you will finally earn the right to stand in the presence of the divine. You treat your faith like an endless, exhausting construction project. And every time you fail, every time you snap in anger or fall back into an old, destructive pattern, you feel the sickening physical drop of losing ground. You assume you have to start climbing all over again. You think salvation is a mountain you have to scale. But Jesus dismantles the mountain entirely. He tells the most disciplined religious man in the city that no amount of human climbing will ever pierce the atmosphere of heaven. You cannot manufacture a new spiritual life any more than a baby can manufacture its own physical birth. A newborn does not pull itself into the harsh light of the delivery room by its own sheer willpower. It is carried into the world by a biological force entirely outside of its control. Birth is not an achievement. It is a reception. When Jesus says, "You must be born anothen," born from above, he is taking the entire burden of salvation off of your exhausted shoulders. The kingdom of God is not a fortress you finally breach after decades of white-knuckled moral effort and try harder to be righteous. They assume Jesus is handing this religious leader a new, updated checklist for salvation. It is a reality that descends upon you when you finally drop the hammer and stop trying to build your own way up. If you look at the religious systems of the world, every single one of them is a set of instructions on how to ascend. They are blueprints for a ladder, handing you the tools to scrape your way up into the divine presence, promising that if you just work hard enough, you will eventually touch the sky. But the text proposes a terrifying, beautiful alternative. God does not wait for you at the top of the ladder. Because the most profound use of the word anothen in the entire New Testament does not happen in a quiet conversation in the dark. It happens on a Friday afternoon, accompanied by the sound of tearing fabric. The veil in the temple is massive. It is 60 feet high. It is 4 inches thick. It is woven of heavy blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. It stands as the ultimate, unyielding barrier. It separates the holy from the holiest. It separates the dirt of human failure from the pure, blazing presence of God. It is the final rung of the religious ladder, and it is a rung no man is ever allowed to climb. Then comes a Friday afternoon just outside the city walls. The sky turns black at noon. A man hangs on Roman wood. But if you look closer at the specific vocabulary Jesus uses, at the absolute confusion on the face of the man standing in the dark, he gasps for air. He breathes his last. He yields up his pneuma, and the Gospel of Mark records what happens next. The ground violently shakes. The limestone rocks split, and the massive, heavy curtain hanging inside the temple suddenly rips violently in two. It tears from top to bottom. Read the Greek text underneath that violent moment. The word Mark uses for "from the top" is anothen, the exact same word Jesus used in the dark room with Nicodemus. Nicodemus thought he had to climb up to God. He thought he had to perfect his moral resume. He thought he had to painstakingly pull himself through the heavy fabric of the law. He thought salvation was a mountain he had to scale. But look at the tear in the fabric. The rip does not start at the floor. A human high priest does not take a sharp knife to the bottom hem and slice upward. Human hands do not dismantle the barrier. Human effort does not open the door. It rips from the ceiling down. It breaks from the heavens down to the dirt. It tears anothen. This is not a structural failure of a temple curtain. It is the violent descent of grace. God does not wait for the exhausted Pharisee to finally reach the top rung of his righteousness. God rips the ceiling open. God comes down to the dirt. You start to see something the billboard reading completely misses. This phrase is not a command to start over. It is a demolition of human effort, and the veil is torn by the exact same untamable force that rattled the wooden shutters in the upper room. The law demands that you climb. The law demands that you wash your hands. The law demands that you count your steps. But the wind blows where it wishes. The Spirit moves. The barrier falls. The ladder you have been building your entire life is completely destroyed in a single, earth-shattering moment of torn fabric. And that realization changes the entire trajectory of the human story. A Pharisee walks through the dark alleys of Jerusalem and discovers his lifelong climb has been a waste. A teacher tries to calculate a physical rebirth and encounters a biological impossibility. A peasant rabbi ignores the theological flattery and points to the wild, unpredictable wind rattling the shutters. A single Greek word sits silently in the text and shifts the entire axis of salvation from a human timeline to a heavenly descent. A lifetime of white-knuckled rule-keeping stalls out in confusion, and the absolute helplessness of human effort is exposed. A man hangs dying on a Roman cross and yields his final breath into the dark sky. A massive, heavy temple veil is violently torn in two, and God himself steps down into the dirt. One word, one direction. When we hear the words "born again," we think of a second chance, a do-over. We think of a person making a conscious decision. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the sheer exhaustion of Nicodemus, a man who has spent decades measuring cups of ritual water and counting his exact Sabbath steps, realizing in the dim light of a sputtering oil lamp that all his meticulous building could not get him 1 inch closer to the ceiling. If you are in a season where you are terrified of losing ground, where you feel like you are desperately clinging to the rungs of a religious ladder, exhausted from managing your behaviors and hiding your failures, to prove you belong in the room, John chapter 3 is a place to let go. The wind blows where it wishes. He does not ask you to climb. He asks you to stand in the draft. If this lifted a heavy burden off of you, subscribe and leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to earn their way up to the divine. And please pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who tears the veil from the top down meet you exactly where you are standing in the dirt and give you a birth you could never earn from the ground up. But when you strip away 2,000 years of cultural baggage and sit in the dimly lit room in first century Palestine, the conversation takes a radically different turn. Jesus looks at a man who has spent his entire life climbing the ladder of religious perfection, a man who has memorized the Torah, kept every Sabbath law, and earned the highest respect his nation can offer. And Jesus tells him that none of his climbing matters. Jesus is not offering a new theology. He is declaring a biological impossibility, and he does it using a single, brilliant, frustrating Greek word, a word that operates like a linguistic trap. A man hurries through the narrow, unlit alleys. He is not a vagabond. He is not a rebel hiding from the Roman guard. A word that means one thing to the scholar standing in the room, and something entirely different to the God who is speaking it. But to understand the trap, you have to understand the man walking into it. We tend to read the name Nicodemus and picture a generic biblical extra, just another bearded figure standing in the background of a Sunday school flannel graph. But in first century Judea, the Sanhedrin was the Supreme Court, the Senate, and the highest theological academy rolled into a single council of 71 men. Nicodemus was not merely a member. Jesus later refers to him as the teacher of Israel. To hold that title required an effort that would break a normal human being. Imagine the sheer physical and mental toll. Decades spent bent over heavy animal skin scrolls. The smell of dried leather and iron gall ink filling the study room. Eyes straining by the dim. The flickering light of a clay oil lamp to memorize not just the words of the Torah, but the exact spacing of the Hebrew consonants. The Pharisees had identified 613 distinct commandments within the text. And then they built what they called a fence around the law. Hundreds of additional microscopic rules designed to keep you so far away from sin that you could not even accidentally stumble into it. It meant constantly monitoring what you touched. It meant feeling the tight, leather straps of the phylacteries binding the scriptures to your arm and forehead. He is a Pharisee, a ruler of the Jews, an elite theologian of the highest order. He wears the heavy wool garments of his station, a constant physical pressure reminding you of your duty. It meant the exhausting daily calculation of exactly how many steps you could legally take on a Sabbath day before your walking was classified as work. The Pharisees believed that if all of Israel could perfectly keep the law for just one single Sabbath, the Messiah would finally arrive to rescue them. This was not a casual faith. It was a crushing, lifelong architecture of behavioral management. Nicodemus is a man who has built his entire identity on ascending, rung by rung, year by year. He has climbed the ladder of purity. He has separated himself from the dirt of the Roman occupation, from the compromise of the tax collectors, from the ignorance of the unwashed crowds. His righteousness is a massive, towering monument built carefully with his own two hands, stone by stone. And when he comes to Jesus in the dark, he approaches him as a colleague. "Rabbi," he says, "we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him." Notice the pronoun, we. He is speaking on behalf of the establishment. He recognizes a peer, perhaps a new prophetic voice, and he is ready for a high-level theological symposium. He expects Jesus to hand him a new interpretation of the law, a sharper blueprint for the ladder they are both supposedly building. But Nicodemus is about to discover that the carpenter from the fringes catching the dust of the road as he moves. The night air is sharp, carrying the faint smell of burning olive oil. Nazareth has not come to give him a hammer. He has come with a wrecking ball. The room is quiet. The oil lamp sputters, casting long shadows against the walls. Nicodemus finishes his polite, careful greeting. He waits for the theological volley. Jesus does not return the compliment. He ignores the flattery. He bypasses the theology. He drops a heavy, immovable statement. "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born anothen, he cannot see the kingdom of God." The words land like heavy stones on a dirt floor. Nicodemus stops. His brilliant, highly trained mind stalls completely. He has read the prophets. He has memorized the law. He has fasted twice a week. He has carefully managed every external behavior of his life for decades. But this phrase does not fit into any of his categories. Born anothen. Nicodemus looks at Jesus in utter disbelief. He pictures the physical mechanics. He imagines an old man, wrinkled skin, brittle bones, a lifetime of accumulated history. How does a man unlive his life? How does he rewind the clock? He stares at the peasant rabbi and asks the only logical question a sane person could ask. How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? From the few lamps still flickering in upper windows, he is risking everything. His reputation, his seat on the Sanhedrin, his entire life's work. Read that response carefully. Nicodemus is an intellectual giant, yet he immediately jumps to the most grotesque, literal interpretation possible. A grown man climbing back inside his mother. He is not engaging in abstract poetry. He is pointing out a biological glitch. He thinks Jesus is talking about a physical reset, a second attempt at the flesh and blood experience. And because he is a Pharisee, a man whose entire religion is built on what human bodies do, what human hands touch, what human feet walk away from, he cannot conceive of an event that does not rely on his own physical effort. The heavy silence stretches between them. The elite scholar is confused. The carpenter is calm. Nicodemus assumes Jesus has made a ridiculous logical error. He assumes Jesus has chosen the wrong word. But Jesus has not made a mistake. He has chosen the exact, perfect word. A word with a trapdoor built right into the center of its Greek letters. The Gospel of John was written in Greek, and the word sitting in the center of chapter 3, verse 3, is the adverb anothen. When you read your English Bible, you almost certainly see the phrase, born again. But the word anothen is a linguistic double entendre. It possesses two completely different, simultaneous meanings, depending on how you look at the text. Its first meaning is chronological. He walks until he finds the right door, hidden away from the crowds that usually press in on the peasant rabbi from Nazareth. It means again, or anew, or a second time. This is the definition Nicodemus hears. He filters the word through his timeline, assuming Jesus is asking him to hit the reset button on his physical life and start the human biological experience over from scratch. But its second meaning is spatial. It means from above, or from a higher place. If looking at the ancient language, underneath your English translation, feels like discovering a hidden room in your own house, you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe and leave a comment below. Even one word helps, because every week we dig into the original context that changes how these texts read. So John records this specific Greek term to capture the exact moment two different realities collide in the dark. Nicodemus is thinking chronologically. He is thinking horizontally. He believes righteousness is a timeline of human effort that you walk down, step by careful step, and he is baffled at the idea of walking all the way back to the beginning. Jesus is thinking vertically. Every other time the word anothen appears in the Gospel of John, it never means again. Later, in this exact same chapter, John writes, "He who comes anothen is above all." When Jesus stands trial before Pilate and the Roman governor threatens him with crucifixion, you can hear the sound of a knuckle against rough wood. The door opens. What happens in this room produces the most famous phrase. Jesus replies, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you anothen, from above, from an entirely different realm of origin." That route changes everything about the billboard you drive past on the highway. When Jesus looks at this exhausted, hyper-religious Pharisee, he is not telling him to try harder. He is not handing him a new set of rules to start over and finally get it right this time. The phrase is not a command for a do-over. It is the announcement of an invasion. Jesus is telling Nicodemus that the kingdom of God is not something you can build from the dirt up, no matter how perfectly you keep the law or how many heavy scrolls you memorize. You cannot climb your way into it. It has to come down to you. The birth he is describing does not originate in the human will, or the human flesh, or the human capacity to follow instructions. It requires an origin point outside of the self. But Jesus is not finished dismantling the Pharisees' worldview, because he immediately introduces a second word, pulling a force of nature out of the cold night air outside the window to drive the final nail into the coffin of human effort. The room grows quiet again. A sudden gust of cold air rattles the heavy wooden shutters. The small flame of the clay oil lamp flickers. In modern Christianity, you have probably heard it. It is plastered on highway billboards. It is printed on the backs of tracks, and dances wildly, throwing long shadows against the limestone walls. Jesus points toward the dark window and the noise outside. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. He uses another double meaning, another linguistic trap. In the Greek text, the word is pneuma. If they are speaking Hebrew or Aramaic, in that room. The root is ruach. Both ancient words carry the exact same, untranslatable, triple meaning. Wind, breath, spirit. You hear its sound in the dark. You feel the chill on your face. You watch it scatter the loose dirt in the narrow streets of Jerusalem. You do not start it. You do not stop it. You cannot schedule its arrival. You cannot trap it inside a carefully constructed fence of 613 religious rules. Jesus is painting a picture of absolute human helplessness. Nicodemus has spent a lifetime measuring out exact cups of water for ceremonial washing. He has counted his steps on the Sabbath. He has carefully weighed his tithes of mint and dill and cumin. He has managed every single variable of his religious existence. But you cannot manage a storm. The Spirit is not a reward for perfect behavior. It is an unpredictable weather event that alters the landscape. Jesus tells this master of Israel that this heavenly birth, this being born anno then, works exactly. It is yelled through megaphones on crowded street corners. You must be born again. Most people assume they know exactly what this means, like the wind rattling the shutters. You do not generate it by trying harder. You do not earn it by memorizing the Torah. You just get caught in the draft. Nicodemus is stripped of all his credentials. The heavy wool garments of his high office mean nothing to the wind. His theological degrees mean nothing. His flawless moral resume means absolutely nothing. He stares at the peasant rabbi, completely undone. His entire paradigm of ascending up to God has just been shattered. He whispers his final question in the entire scene. How can these things be? He is still desperately looking for a mechanism. He is still looking for a ladder he can climb. But Jesus is about to show him that the ladder he has been building his whole life is facing the wrong direction. If you have ever spent years of your life trying to be just a little bit better, you know exactly the exhaustion Nicodemus is feeling in that room. You know the heavy, relentless weight of the ladder. Maybe you do not wear the fringed garments of a first-century Pharisee, but you know the modern equivalent of the climb. You manage your behaviors. You monitor your thoughts. You try to read the right books, pray the right prayers, and build a resume of morality that proves you belong in the room with God. You measure your spiritual progress by how much distance you can put.